Welcome to another edition of Showbox Sires podcast series on our new release bulls, and we're excited to release a really fun bull that is going to cross lots of bases here in our world. He will be released at Select Sires through the Showbox Sires program. We're excited to release KINGME-P at Select Sires. 744HO17422 is his code number. He's an interesting bull. He has lots of boxes checked, and we'll talk about them. An A2 bull, throws the pole gene, and we're going to talk about where he comes from and the family behind him in a minute. As always, typically we have Mike Duckett and myself on. Mike's not going to be on the call today because finally there's a little bit of hay weather in Wisconsin, and he's in the hay field. So we'll let him make some feed for some of our cows. But it's my pleasure to introduce two guys that I've known for some time. We're going to welcome to our podcast Carter Corners Holsteins. We have Andy and Tyler Carter. We're excited to welcome them, and they are the folks behind the dam of this bull, and they're going to tell us about him. As I introduce the Carters, Andy, I'm going to tell a few stories about you. You know, I've been in this business, Andy, 30-something years, just like you have. Andy's always been a fixture of the business. When index cows were popular, he had some of the great index cows in the business. He's always had big pedigreed cows, and he's always been a guy that the whole industry enjoyed being around. He's enthusiastic and fun. Pleased to call Andy a good friend of mine for the past 30 years. So, Andy, it's great to have you. But more importantly, just like any of us, the next generation's supposed to be better. I think you nailed it, Andy, because the next generation is better. His son, Tyler, also on the podcast today, has really gotten into the business. He's one of the great young cowmen in the business. You'll see him judging shows and owning great cows. And he'll talk a little about what they're doing with their show cows at Carter's Corner. So long introduction, but welcome, boys. Glad to have you on our podcast.
Thanks for having us.
So, guys, first of all, let's start off a little bit and tell us about Carter Corners Holsteins and what's going on there now.
Right now we're milking like right at 100 head. We do a little bit of both with the show side of things, and my dad's pretty good at the genomic side. We have free stalls for the main herd, and then the rest of the show cows live in box stalls.
Andy, your involvement in this business over the past, I call it 30 years because that's how long I've known you. What have you seen happen in the business, Andy? Tell us a little bit what you've seen happen over the past 30 years. You've seen it all, Andy.
Well, back in the day, they'd call them hot houses, where they'd have a high index cow by having poor herd mates or the other cow getting special care. And I didn't really think that was all quite so fair. I always try to treat my cows equally and let the best one shine. But now we have genomics, and that took away all that, whatever you want to call that. And I think the genomics are really dialed in now. And I've noticed a lot of fertility issues in the cows over the last several years. And I'm a firm believer in breeding for daughter pregnancy rate bulls that are plus. And they're rare as hen teeth on these show bulls, if you look. And KINGME and Dazzle and High Hope are all plus. And I think that's a great start. We got to get these cows more fertile. A buddy of mine pulled up some old bulls like Valiant and them, and they're like minus 3,000 of milk or whatnot, but they're still all plus DPR. Isn't that crazy?
Huh.
After all these years. Well, we got to get fertile cows.
You speak our language, Andy, because one of the things Mike and I are really working at Showbox, we want great pedigrees and great type and production, but we really want those plus DPR bulls. So you led us into a little bit about the family. I'd like both of you to talk to us about the dam of KINGME, because she's a cow that you guys have owned and developed. So give us a little bit of her story, if you guys would.
Yeah, for me, cow herself, you would take a whole herd full of cows like her. She's a very balanced cow. She's, approximately 60 inches tall. She's not too big. She's strong with a really, really, really good udder. Her udder is wicked good. Real high, wide rear udder. Her forudder is smashed right in with veins all over it. She's real square in her rump structure, walks on a good set of feet and legs. Like I said, you would take a whole herd of cows like her. She's truly the modern kind, I'd call her.
And Andy, in all your years of owning good cows, this one ranks among one of the good ones, I'd say, in your mind.
Oh, I'd say so. I had Patron Alley, and I had a Black Star years ago. I sold to Sid Bream, and I've had some good cows, but she is right up there because she's really transmitting. When I bought her, she still is. I just checked yesterday. She's plus 315 on udder composite and plus 1.9 DPR after all this time. I think she was like 2.8 on DPR at one time and like 4 something on udders.
Wow.
But she's still highly respectful, and she seems to be transmitting those genes.
What's the status of the cow today, guys?
She just calved yesterday on a 102-degree day, and she actually looks pretty decent. Had a heifer Hulu, so that's all good.
Great. Yeah, so we can expect maybe some good things out of her this year, maybe improved score and another big nice lactation
She
on
was
the cow.
dry last classification. That was bad timing, but it is what it is.
She should, as long as she stays healthy, she should be an easy, excellent cow. No doubt about that.
Tyler, you brought up some of her really good traits, and Andy, you focused on the fertility. Tell us a little bit about how you developed this cow. What have you got, some daughters running around and all that jazz?
Actually, I work with Ed Feller's group a lot, and we shipped several embryos out there to Utah, and they put them in. We actually only have one daughter here. Well, 2 now. We're getting ready to breed her, so she's just a young heifer.
And I think this lustrous P bull is very interesting. Like, Xdale's bred a great herd of cattle, and we actually worked with them to acquire this bull. He was born at Xdale in Utah and comes to us via them. And boy, they've bred nice cattle for years, haven't they?
If you could find a better man than John Conrad, I'd like to meet him too. So
yeah, just a fantastic guy, and we really enjoy working with him. Can you tell us a little more about the pedigree behind the cow? I know they aren't cows that you owned.
I always liked that Delta bull, but her granddam was Uno Hope, and she was always max scored. And then they put her on a continuous flush program at that point and never bred her back. But Kyle Demmer told me that was a great cow. And if she wasn't at Bud John getting a little bit overshadowed, she would have been a lot more hyped, if that makes any sense.
The pictures of the cow are phenomenal. I was working on our flyer yesterday, and when you look at the Uno, or you look at the Delta, or you look at the Noble herself, like, they all look the same, don't they? They're square cut, balanced cows. Tyler, you call them modern, and I would say that's right.
Like he said, if you had 100 of them, you wouldn't be disappointed,
As we continue to move through our discussion, one thing that we look forward to is, how do you use a bull like this? When I look at this bull's linear traits, he pretty much nails it all the way across the board. Guys, do you have some breeding advice on, if you were going to use this bull, like, how would you use him? What would you protect him on? What kind of sire daughters would you use the bull on?
He's a total outcross, the breeding there. Bulls like Doc and Lambda for sure. And I think even like a bull like Sidekick, you could name bulls all day long. He's just different. And that's really what we need right now, is a little bit of different breeding. As good as Doc and Lambda and Sidekick are, that's kind of what a lot of the sons are as well.
And this bull really doesn't have any of those bulls in his pedigree, and still gives you 3 points to type and takes the horns off. And Andy, you brought it up before. He doesn't have the extreme DPR that Mama has, but it's still pretty darn good for a 3.28 type bull. He is 0.6 plus. And a plus is still kind of unique.
The bull's minus 0.5, you say no big deal, but that's a whole point difference. So,
Pretty excited about that for sure. As you look at this pedigree, Tyler, the things that you think this cow will transmit to the next generation, give me 2 or 3 traits that you would predict that this cow is going to really pass on.
Her udder is so good. She's an udder improver for sure. There's no doubt about that. I mean, if you want to improve udders, this KINGME bull will for sure do that. And also, she's really modern as far as size. She's balanced. She's really got a lot of width up through her chest floor. And I think that's something that we lack in our industry right now, is bulls with strength. I really think she'll bring that to the table as well. Yeah, I would say udder and just being modern size and strength.
And DPR.
Tyler, you talked about fixing the outside of the cow, fixing the frame and the udders. Andy, you talked about fixing the inside of the cow with her fertility and reproduction. And it all goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I heard you say at a sale one time, this is a good cow. It's a pregnant show cow, you said, and everybody laughed, because that's true.
It used to be quite a battle to get these cows pregnant. And I think the industry's made great strides, because, Andy, just like you're preaching, nobody wants to own cows that don't get pregnant anymore. Too costly. To kind of wrap this up, it's been a great discussion, guys. We're sure excited to have you on this podcast. Would you leave our listeners with any final thoughts from each of you about the way this bull and the impact he could have?
Like I said earlier, I think you can use them on anything. As we're doing a bunch of IVF work here recently, and we're always looking for bulls that as much as we like Doc, Lambda, and Psychic, we're looking for bulls that don't have that bloodline in them. This is a bull that will be right up heavy on our radar with a total outcross pedigree, a high udder composite, plus DPR. I think he's a bull for everybody.
I love the Party's poll. That's worth so much anymore.
And now I've worked with pole genetics, Andy, for 30 years. And frankly, the pole bulls didn't used to be good enough. And today we don't have to give up anything and we can get the horns knocked off them.
Exactly. If you have to give up something, okay, we'll get the dehorners out. But with this bull, KINGME, you're not giving up anything. Matter of fact, forget the pole gene. He's still a great bull. And I appreciate you guys working with us, but I think you're going to be fine with him. I really do.
Tyler, back to you quickly. I told a guy the other day, I think you use this bull on Doc daughters, and you brought it up several times, Doc, Lambda, Sidekick. You think about those pretty frames of the Docs, and how many Docs are there in the world? I mean, he's going to be a million unit bull before he gets done, I'm guessing. Part of the reason Mike and I brought this bull forward is because we just thought such a great cross on the Docs, and I certainly agree with your other bulls too, but I think the bull could make a show calf out of a cow, like a Doc.
100%. I know it's early in the game, and we used brothers to this bull, KINGME, High Hope, and Dazzle all over our herd, and they're just popping up as calves. I know I'm biased. Bias aside, they are the prettiest, most square calves on our farm, bar none. Like I said, a brother to KINGME.
Gosh, you guys have had great success with those bulls. They're well respected in the business, and that's why we went there. Listen, guys, this has been a great discussion. I know you're busy. How many acres of crops do you guys look after down there?
About 350, not a lot, but it keeps us busy, that's for sure. With all the rain, it's been very challenging. And now we're begging for rain and it's not raining. Imagine that.
It's always like that. Well, I'd like to thank Andy and Tyler Carter Corners Holsteins from Illinois, for joining us on this edition of the podcast series of the evolution of the great cow and the release of our next Showbox Sires bull, KINGME, 744 HO 17422. KINGME will be available exclusively around the whole business from your Select Sires Worldwide Sires distributor. Just like we say in most of these podcasts, Mike and I focus on cow families, but when you can put names like Carter Corner and Esdale behind a bull, it certainly does us a lot of good. So we thank you guys for being on, and we hope you'll join us for our next edition of the podcast series, and thank you for listening.